All right, strap yourselves in, everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into one of the most baffling events in UFO history.
Yeah, the 1952 Washington, D.C. sightings.
We've got newspaper articles from back then, official reports, a podcast discussion that really got us thinking.
Even a YouTube analysis of, well, you wouldn't believe it, astronomical observations from those very nights.
We're going to be hearing from pilots and radar operators who saw these objects with their own eyes.
We'll break down the official explanations, and of course, we got to peek into those conspiracy theories.
You know we can't resist those.
It's part of the fun.
Okay, so picture this. July 1952, Cold War tensions are high.
And out of nowhere,
Washington, D.C. becomes this, UFO hotspot.
it grabbed the whole nation's attention.
Objects just, zipping across the sky at impossible speeds.
Appearing and vanishing from radar, even experienced pilots were like, what is going on?
And here's the thing. This wasn't just a couple of people seeing things.
We're talking multiple sources, all independent, all saying the same thing.
Radar operators, commercial pilots, military pilots, even people on the ground.
Military personnel, everyday folks, they all saw these strange objects.
It's like straight out of sci-fi movie.
But this was real, happening right above the nation's capital.
To really get a feel for how strange this was, let's focus on one night, July 19th.
Okay.
Edward Nugent, an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport, he picks up 7 unidentified blips on his radar.
And these weren't your usual blips.
Yeah, Nugent, he's saying they're moving erratically at speeds no aircraft back then could even dream of.
His supervisor, Harry Barnes, a guy with years of experience, said their movements were, and I quote, completely radical.
Not your average Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a seasoned air traffic controller.
Knows his radar like the back of his hand.
And he's seeing something totally off the charts.
Yeah, at first they thought maybe a glitch in the system.
Right. Makes sense.
Barnes had other controllers double-check the equipment, but everything was working perfectly.
Then
Things get even weirder. These blips, they start showing up on radar at Andrews Air Force Base 2. That's about 10 miles away.
So 2 separate radar stations miles apart, both picking up these unexplained things.
That's when the Air Force decided, okay, we need to scramble some jets, go check this out.
Makes sense. Got to investigate.
And get this, the pilots, they saw what the radar was showing.
Wow.
One pilot, Captain S.C. Pierman, described seeing white, tailless, fast-moving lights right when those blips were popping up on the radar at National.
So we've got radar data, pilot confirmation, ground observers all saying the same thing.
Seems pretty open and shut, right?
You'd think so, but there's a big piece missing.
Ah, you're talking about photographic or video evidence?
Exactly. Despite all those eyewitnesses and radar data, no clear pictures or videos from those events have ever been found.
It's a huge gap in the evidence.
And you know what that does, right?
Oh, yeah. Fuels all sorts of speculation and conspiracy theories.
But for now, let's stick to the facts.
Okay.
What did the government say back then? What was their explanation?
Well, the Air Force, they held a big press
The
conference.
spotlight was on them.
And Major General John Samford, a top official, he came out and said it was atmospheric temperature inversions.
What's that?
It's when a layer of warm air gets trapped under a layer of cold air. Can mess with radar readings.
I see. And what about those visual sightings?
Oh, those, he said, were probably just stars or meteors, celestial objects, misidentified.
So basically, a big misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity.
That was the official line.
But not everyone bought it, right?
Not really. Even after that press conference, lots of folks, including some who were there, they weren't convinced.
I can see why.
Temperature inversions, okay, maybe, but objects moving at 7,000 miles per hour.
That's insane.
And experienced pilots mistaking a star for something, doing those crazy maneuvers.
Doesn't quite add up.
It's a head-scratcher for sure.
So naturally, we got to talk about those conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah. That's where things get really interesting.
But before we go there, I'm curious about the public's reaction back then.
Right. How did people respond to all this?
1952, Cold War, UFOs over D.C., it must have been a wild time.
It was the Washington Flap. It wasn't just some military or scientific thing. It captured everyone's imagination.
People were spooked.
Absolutely. Especially with everything else going on, fear of nuclear war, suspicion of communists.
And now, UFOs.
People were looking up at the sky wondering, what's next?
It's like this deep-seated fear of the unknown, something beyond even the Cold War.
Exactly. And all this public interest, all this fear, it had real consequences.
How so?
It led to the Air Force creating Project Blue Book.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. What was it exactly?
A program dedicated to investigating UFO sightings.
Like a real-life X-Files.
Kinda, but even their conclusions were often met with, Well, let's just say not everyone believed them.
Especially in cases like this, where simple explanations just don't cut it.
Right. Sometimes the simplest answer isn't the right one.
And didn't the CIA get involved too? That adds a whole other layer of intrigue.
Oh, yeah. They were worried that these UFO sightings could be used to cause panic.
So chaos.
Yeah.
Maybe even cover up a real attack.
Exactly. And that concern, it led to the formation of the Robertson Panel in 1953.
A group of scientists, right?
Yeah, their job was to figure out if UFOs were a national security threat.
So the Washington flap, it pushed the government to take UFOs more seriously.
Even if it was mainly from a security standpoint, yeah.
But here's where things take a turn. A new piece of evidence comes into play.
Oh, you're talking about that photographic plate from the Mount Palomar Observatory?
You know, this plate, it was taken on the very night of the first big sighting in D.C.
And it shows something truly mind-boggling.
Okay, you got to tell me more. What's on this plate?
Imagine you're an astronomer, you're looking at this plate of the night sky, and suddenly you see 3 star-like objects.
Okay.
Clear as day on one plate, gone an hour later, vanished without a trace on the next plates.
That's wild.
And these weren't just smudges, they were bright, well-defined points of light.
Couldn't it have been a flaw in the plate itself?
That's what they thought at first, but astrophysicists, they've analyzed this thing up and down,
Yeah.
ruled out all those possibilities, no known astronomical phenomena, no technical errors, they can't explain it.
So we have these 3 unexplained objects appearing and disappearing, captured on a plate from one of the most powerful telescopes back then.
Right when the first major UFO sighting happens in D.C., talk about a coincidence.
It's almost too perfect to be just chance, right?
Researchers have even used the plate to figure out how far away these objects were. Turns out, relatively close, maybe even within Earth's orbit.
Wow. So are we saying this plate could be the best evidence of UFOs we've ever gotten?
It's definitely a top contender, but like always, more research is needed before we can say anything for sure.
It's like a whole new chapter in the Washington flap story.
It has the potential to change everything we thought we knew.
This is one of those hold on to your hats moments for sure.
We're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover.
Well, I'm on the edge of my seat. Can't wait to dig deeper.
Let's do it.
All right, folks, stay tuned. Things are about to get even more interesting.
You bet. Okay, so you want to dive into those conspiracy theories?
Oh, absolutely. Let's get into it.
All right, buckle up, because the theories about the Washington flap, they get pretty wild.
I bet the internet loves a good UFO mystery.
And this one is like a breeding ground for speculation.
Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the most popular theories is that those UFOs weren't just, passing through. They were sent to D.C. on purpose.
Like a message.
Yeah, a show of force, maybe even a warning to the U.S. government.
Like an extraterrestrial, we're here kind of thing.
Exactly. Some people believe it was a way for them to flex their, let's say, advanced tech.
Show off a bit.
And maybe, just maybe, influence some decisions, political stuff.
I mean, it was the Cold War. That's got to be a little unnerving. Superior beings watching us.
And they were seen flying over some pretty sensitive areas, the White House, the Capitol building.
Adds to the whole, what are they up to vibe.
Right. Then there's the theory that it was a botched first contact attempt.
Like, they wanted to say hi, but it went wrong.
Something like that. Maybe they were trying to reach out to the government, D.C. being, well, the center of power.
But why not just land on the White House lawn? Make it official.
Some say the government might have rejected their attempt, hence the repeated appearances.
Oh, like, hey, we're trying to talk to you.
And then there's the theory that it was all a secret military project.
Like our own tech gone awry.
Exactly. Some super secret experimental aircraft that would explain the crazy maneuvers and the secrecy.
It's a good theory.
But we got to remember, these are just theories. We need to look at the evidence, think critically.
Don't jump to conclusions.
Right. Got to stay objective.
Speaking of evidence, we talked about the lack of photos and videos from back then.
Yeah.
But didn't some newspaper reporters claim to have seen things?
You're right. Several journalists said they saw stuff firsthand or got info directly from people involved.
Like real boots on the ground reporting.
They were chasing the story, just like any other big news event.
So, talking to military folks, air traffic controllers, pilots, even everyday people.
Trying to piece together what happened.
Did any of them describe seeing anything particularly strange?
There are accounts of unusual lights, weird movements in the sky, especially during those first sightings on July 19th.
Specific details.
One reporter from the Washington Post, he was working near the airport, said he saw Air Force jets scrambling to intercept something.
Wow.
He said it was unlike anything he'd ever witnessed. Definitely not a routine drill.
That's a pretty powerful statement coming from someone who was there.
It adds to the whole mystery, right?
Definitely. So we've got military, air traffic control, pilots, journalists, all saying something weird was happening.
It's a pretty compelling collection of testimonies.
Makes you wonder about those official explanations, the temperature inversions and misidentified stars.
Right. Do they really hold up?
Especially with the speeds and maneuvers those objects were reportedly pulling off.
That's a tough one.
And then we have that photo plate from Mount Palomar. Throws a whole new wrench into the works.
Talk about a curveball.
The more we dig into this, the more questions pop up.
That's the thing about a good mystery. It keeps you guessing.
Okay, so we've looked at eyewitness accounts, radar data, government explanations, even those conspiracy theories.
What's the verdict?
What can we say we know for sure about the Washington flap?
Well, one thing's for certain. Something unusual went down over D.C. in July 1952.
No doubt about it.
We have multiple reliable sources, trained professionals, regular folks, all seeing stuff that can't be easily explained.
So it wasn't just mass hysteria.
Not at all. We have the radar records. We have corroborating accounts from people who know what they're looking at.
But the big question remains, what were those objects?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that lack of clear photos or videos, it just adds to the mystery.
It's frustrating, but we do have that photo plate, right?
That's our wild card.
It's not conclusive, but it's definitely intriguing.
Could change everything.
The Washington flap, it really makes you think about the limits of what we know.
You know, we think we understand the world, and then something like this happens.
Throws everything into question.
It's humbling.
It is. The universe is full of surprises.
And sometimes those surprises are more questions than answers.
That's what keeps us curious, keeps us searching.
What if we could go back to July 1952 with all our current tech and knowledge?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Could we solve the mystery of the Washington flap?
Maybe, maybe not. Some things might just be beyond our grasp, at least for now.
But it's fun to think about.
It is, and it reminds us that there's still a sense of wonder out there.
Even in this age of information overload.
Exactly. The unknown is still out there, waiting to be discovered.
Okay, before we wrap up this part, let's talk about the impact of the Washington flap.
Okay.
We touched on public reaction, the CIA's concerns, but what about the bigger picture?
You mean, did it change anything?
Yeah, did it affect UFO research, government policies?
Oh, it definitely had an impact. This flap, along with other big UFO sightings, it made people take notice.
Scientists, government agencies, everyone was like, hold on, what's going on here?
It raised some serious questions. National security, the possibility of aliens, the need for better investigation methods.
So in a way, it legitimized UFO research.
To some extent, yeah, it forced the issue into the spotlight. Couldn't just brush it aside anymore.
And Project Blue Book, they got even busier, right?
Oh, yeah. They became the go-to for UFO investigations. The pressure was on to explain these things.
Especially the ones that couldn't be easily dismissed.
Exactly.
But even with Project Blue Book, the Washington flap remained a mystery.
Pretty much.
And their explanations, well, not everyone bought them.
A lot of people felt like they were hiding something, covering up the truth.
And that skepticism, it's still around today.
Oh, yeah. The Washington flap, it's become a cornerstone for those who believe in alien visitation and government cover-ups.
It's amazing how an event from over 70 years ago still has such a grip on us.
It's the power of mystery, the human need to understand the unknown.
We want to know what's out there.
It's part of who we are.
Okay, as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Gotcha.
I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, shoot.
We've explored all these different perspectives, the eyewitnesses, the government, the conspiracies.
It's been quite the journey.
But here's the challenge. If you could travel back to July 1952 with all our knowledge and tech,
Time travel.
how would you solve the mystery of the Washington flap? What evidence would you look for? Who would you talk to?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like it.
It's your turn to be the investigator.
We've given you the information. Now it's up to you to dig deeper, explore the theories, come to your own conclusions.
Maybe you'll find the missing piece of the puzzle.
You never know.
All right, so we spent a lot of time talking about those 1952 sightings over Washington, D.C.
Some pretty mind-boggling stuff.
But now I want to shift gears a little, talk about something different.
Ooh, what's that?
Technosignatures.
Ah, okay. Getting into the search for alien tech.
Exactly. It's funny how those historical UFO sightings, like the Washington Flap, have kind of shaped how we look for alien civilizations now.
Yeah, I see what you mean. We're not just listening for radio signals anymore.
Right. It's like we've expanded our idea of what an alien signal could be.
We're looking for any clue that might point to a civilization out there.
Unusual atmospheric events, those weird objects on the Mount Palomar plate, anything that seems out of the ordinary.
Exactly. We're not limiting ourselves to just one type of signal anymore.
In the Washington Flap, with those objects moving in ways we couldn't explain, it's like a model for what to look for.
It's broadened our perspective, made us realize we might be missing subtle signs.
Because we're stuck in our old ways of thinking?
Exactly. So instead of just radio waves, we're now searching for any kind of anomaly, something that screams artificial.
Like something beyond our current understanding of physics.
Yeah, the search for technosignatures is a whole new ballgame.
And it's constantly evolving.
New instruments, better analysis techniques, we're even using AI to sift through mountains of data.
Looking for that needle in the haystack.
And those transient objects, the ones that appear and disappear quickly, they're particularly interesting.
Like those 3 objects on the Mount Palomar plate.
Right, they're like cosmic flashbulbs, could be natural, could be artificial, we don't know for sure.
So, how do we tell the difference? How do we know if a transient is alien tech or just a weird space event?
That's the million-dollar question. We look for patterns, characteristics that don't fit with natural explanations.
So, if we see something emitting a very specific type of light or moving in a way that breaks the laws of physics,
Red flags start going up.
we're basically looking for those outliers, the things that make us go, huh, that's strange.
The more data we collect, the better we'll get at spotting those anomalies.
It's exciting to think we might be close to finding something truly groundbreaking.
Imagine proof of an alien civilization.
It would change everything.
But it also raises some big questions. How do we handle such a discovery?
How do we verify it, interpret it, communicate with them even,
It's a huge responsibility, something we need to approach carefully.
as a global community?
For now, the search continues, and that possibility of finding that techno-signature, it's what keeps us going.
And who knows, maybe the next big breakthrough will come from an unexpected source.
Like that Mount Palomar plate.
A reminder to keep an open mind, to never stop exploring the unknown.
That's the spirit.
Well, folks, that about wraps up our deep dives into the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO flap and the fascinating world of technosignatures.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We hope you enjoyed the journey, and we encourage you to keep digging, keep researching.
There's a whole universe of information out there, and the debate about what happened in 1952, it's far from over.
And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another mind-blowing topic, ready to explore more mysteries and wonders.
Until then, keep those minds curious.
And keep those eyes on the skies.